Hi, I'm Brant Menswar, and welcome to my show, Just a Moment. As a former world touring musician turned keynote speaker and author, I've experienced my share of life-altering moments that have both broken me and propelled me forward. How you leverage those moments or push through them will define your destiny. Each week on my show, I'll provide tools on how to maximize those moments, as well as interview some of the most successful entrepreneurs, entertainers, and athletes on how the power of a single moment changed their life. Join me to learn how to change what's possible for your life. It'll take just a moment. We'll be looking deep today, both literally and figuratively, into the life and experiences of record-setting freediver William Trubridge. From his upbringing on the high seas to his enchanting experiences in the depths of the ocean, William has laid eyes on a world everyone dreams of, but few see for themselves. Let's dive in.
Hi, my name is William Trubridge, and this is my moment. I was born in the north of England, like right up on the border with Scotland, on Hadrian's Wall. My family sold the house that they'd built from a ruin in order to buy a boat that we then sailed across the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans to get to New Zealand. And in those first few years of my infancy, the world was a watery one. We were sailing across the seas, playing in the seas. It was our school, it was our supermarket. And so for me, life in and around the sea is just a natural part of my existence. My father was a carpenter, and so when we stopped at these places like the British Virgin Islands or French Polynesia, he would make nice, beautiful furniture for the expats living there. And my mother was a teacher, so she homeschooled us and then also taught at kindergartens when we would stop at these islands. As a kid, I could say I was adventurous, curious, inquisitive. I enjoyed being in the water. As a high school student, I was playing chess and did fairly well, won regional tournaments and stuff, but it was a purely cerebral sport. I had all this physical, nervous energy that didn't have an outlet. And then at university, I replaced that with kind of more physical sports. I went to the gym a lot. I joined the rowing team. It was beautiful being out in the water early in the morning and gliding across the surface, but it was purely brute force. There was nothing for my mind to do at the same time. It was just physical. And it wasn't until I discovered this incredible discipline of freediving that is a combination of the physical and the mental. There's 100% of both.
Will faced a similar conundrum when trying to decide what course he would chart for his career. Torn between logic and lust for adventure, he found himself in uncertain waters.
Went to school in New Zealand, did an undergraduate degree in genetics and worked for a year as a scientist afterwards in Auckland. I tried to pursue that onwards in university as a scientist in genetics, but I wasn't content with being stuck inside in a laboratory all day, like working with things that I couldn't see. I saw that it wasn't enough to really satiate me during a career or a lifetime. And it wasn't until later, after I'd left university and gone traveling, I returned to the ocean and found the sport of freediving. So I started to look, but decided to go traveling in the Caribbean and ultimately found myself on this little island off the coast of Honduras for a couple of months, diving morning and afternoon on both dive boats and spending pretty much the whole day in the water, and fell in love with that world, with just the beauty of being underwater on a breath and everything that it revealed, not just about the aquatic world, but about your own self, your consciousness, and what you're made of. It meant that no part of me was standing idle. You feel in harmony with a world that's completely foreign to us normally. Like, it's completely liquid. We spend our whole lives immersed in gas, but there underwater, we are immersed in liquid on its own terms. My maestro, Umberto Baldassarre, says that the scuba diver dives to look around like a tourist, but in freediving, you dive as a participant or to look inside yourself. So you're one of these creatures and interacting with them, or in the deepest dives, you're really just by yourself and looking inwards.
William had spent his whole life looking inwards, perfecting the art of controlling his nervous system to excel in an underwater existence. his moment of self-mastery came with an unlikely and otherworldly chance encounter.
It was 2018. At this point, I had the world record, and I've had it for 10 years uninterrupted. And so my career as a freediver was solidified. But my partner, Sachiko, was pregnant with our first child. And we traveled to French Polynesia for the filming of a film called Woman by Jean Artist-Bertrand, who's a famous French director. He was collaborating with Anastasia Mikova, who's a Ukrainian director, to create this amazing film about women and women's stories. And they wanted, in combination with the interviews, a shot of a woman who's pregnant, dancing underwater naked with whales. So this is a dream shot that took us over 6 weeks of going out every day to meet the whales in Tahiti in order to get this one shot. So I was there to support Sachiko and to provide safety and help with shooting. But once it had wrapped, we'd finally got the shot, and we had a few days spare before we flew out. So we decided to go to Moorea, which is a neighboring island, just to take some downtime and rest before we flew out. And while we're there, we did some kind of trips to swim with sharks and rays and other wildlife. And on the very last day, we were out beyond the reef. We had some amazing interactions, got some amazing footage. And as we were about to finish and go back to shore, we're coming in, and we saw just in the distance what looked like a mother swimming with her calf. And it was getting late. I could see the conditions weren't that great. The visibility wasn't fantastic. But I said, okay, let me just jump in and see what they're doing. So I jumped off the boat and swam over towards them. I always try and let them guide the interaction. So I'm never forcing myself onto a whale. And if I see that if it's not interested in swimming off, then I'm not going to chase it. And so as soon as it came into view, I just turned and headed in the direction that these two whales were swimming. Normally when they're swimming, they're not very interactive. And in this case, the whales themselves came towards me. They just gradually shortened this distance from being just on the edge of my underwater field of view in the water to the point where the mother with her calf on the other side was swimming right next to me. She was curious, and she made the decision to come closer and closer, right up to the point where she was less than arm's length away, like literally a forearm's distance, that I was right here. So she had positioned herself right next to me so she could have her huge kind of majestic deep blue eye right there and look into mine. And while we were swimming side by side, I just spent that time looking into this eye, and she was looking back at me. And there was such a profound interchange of consciousness. The level of depth of awareness that was clearly visible in that eye was beyond anything that I'd encountered with any other animal, and even, to be honest, maybe with people. Like, you can look into someone's eyes and there's a soul looking back at you, and it was the same in this case, but it was this soul that was just almost like kind of godlike, just so overwhelmingly majestic and incredible, and at the same time curious and empathic. You could tell that it had questions in its mind that it was asking itself about me and what I was doing there. And you could see that kind of displayed in this eye. We often maybe get trapped into this idea that there's human beings on the planet, and then there's animals, and then there's plants, and then there's everything that's not living. And it's really not like that. Like, there's human beings, and then there's whale beings, and there's elephant beings, and then there's others below that on that kind of depth of consciousness, like an insect or a mouse. But we're all on that scale somewhere. And whether we are more conscious than a whale or not is a moot point, but we're definitely not far off. It reminded me that we're sharing this planet with other beings that aren't all humans. that fact, it doesn't hit you in the face, but it's swimming right by your face and demonstrating just how true that is, that we're not alone on this planet. It's a timely reminder, I think.
After his encounter with nature's largest living creature, William found that his profession shaped not only his personal philosophy, but the inherent instinctual reactions to life above the waves.
Freediving is this intimate contact with your own consciousness. When we dive, our bodies are taken out of the equation in the sense that underwater there's no gravity, everything is uniform around you, and so your body dissolves into that uniformity. If you don't feel the pressure of where you're sitting or standing, or the air or anything else, then your body actually disappears after a while. The same with the sensation of time passing. Like when we hold our breath, we don't have that natural metronome of the rhythm of time. You have to be completely at ease with the idea that you're that deep and have no desire to return to the surface, like no anticipation that the dive is going to end. We have an alarm that tells us when we're getting close to the target depth. If you're waiting to hear that alarm, or if you're waiting to see the end of the rope, then just that state of anticipation is an elevated mental state, which is going to consume more oxygen, which is then going to reduce your chance of being able to perform the dive that you've committed to. So in every case, we have to slow the organism and the mind down. The mind is an incredibly oxygen-hungry beast. It consumes 20% of our oxygen at rest when it only weighs 2% of our body weight. So any thoughts, any slowing down of the thoughts, or in particular, dilation of the spaces between the thoughts, will reduce the amount of oxygen that your brain is consuming, and so allow you to do a longer and deeper dive. The dive essentially is a deep meditation, and it actually takes you very quickly into a meditative state. I'm not very good at achieving that state sitting on a mat and just following my breath. It might take me 20 or 30 minutes to get into an empty mind state, but within 20 seconds of diving, I'm right there or beyond it. You're completely operating on autopilot, on the subconscious mind, and so it feels like time is suspended. What is left, without any information coming from your body, without any sensation of time passing, without any information coming from your own brain via your thoughts and emotions, what is left is just your consciousness. It's just this speck of awareness drifting into the abyss. And you have this really vivid experience of being pure awareness without any data, any information coming to that awareness. And I teach this actually as a really powerful method for detaching ourselves from negative emotions, from anxiety, from stress and other pressures. The first step is to realize that any thought, emotion, or state that you're experiencing is part of this container of contents to your consciousness. And when you align yourself with that awareness, then you detach yourself from the contents. And I liken it to a river that's a tumultuous flow, and you're trapped trying to keep your head above the water and trying to get a breath and stay afloat. But there's an alternative where you can take a step to the side and be on the riverbank and watch that river flowing by. So you're not amongst it, you're seeing it for what it is. And by all means, we don't want to live our lives on the riverbank, because there's amazing experiences we want to have, like this experience with the whale, where you want to be there and experiencing it. But the capacity to take the step to the side and to say, okay, that thought that I just had, that's not me. That's just some data that's coming from a part of my brain to my awareness. And freediving is the ultimate kind of test tube experiment in that, right? Because we're taking a breath that's got to sustain you while you swim down deeper than the height of the Statue of Liberty. And if anything happens down there and you start to panic, you are screwed. Your life depends on you being able to stay calm. And knowing that could stress you out more, right? Knowing that if something happens and you get stressed, then you're less likely to get back to the surface. That could be a source of stress. And so it's this vicious feedback loop. And that's what creates this cauldron of high intensity, anxiety or nerves around a performance. And so we have to be able to confront that.
William Trubridge, welcome to Just a Moment. What an incredible, first of all, I'm scared of the ocean. So let me just say that straight up front, that this is a moment that I will never encounter because I have a hard time getting on a giant ship on a cruise on an ocean because there's something about it that scares me to death. So I appreciate this moment so much and just getting a chance to talk to you. A profound experience that has obviously, and in the freediving world and what you've been able to accomplish, shaped who you are as a human being now, that is one looking to take those lessons and teach others. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
It's incredible. I don't know how, I guess growing up on the water is different. I grew up in New Hampshire where we have an ocean there, but it's so cold that nobody really wants to get in the water. And nothing grows in the water when it's that cold. And then having some time spending in Florida where you can be in ankle deep water and get stung by a stingray, I'm not interested in participating in anything like that whatsoever. So this is a new venture for me to have somebody who has made their life not just on the water, but in the water. It's fascinating to me. It's one of those things that almost like someone who's scared of heights, I have this fear of the ocean, I guess it's like a profound respect of, we know less about the ocean than we know about almost anything. And as far as I know, there could be the Loch Ness Monster down there somewhere that we just haven't discovered yet. And that scares the bejesus out of me. So how do you not deal with that sort of thing?
The first thing I'd say is, Brent, you're missing out because we live on a watery planet. It's 70% water. There's maybe a few places in the world where if you go into the water here at this time of day, sure, it might be a little dodgy. But even in the places you mentioned, like in New Hampshire, the water's cold, but there's plenty of life there. In fact, they did a dive to a couple of thousand meters down in Antarctica and found it teeming with life and all sorts of life that they had never seen before. So there's so much going on down there, and none of it is interested in eating you or doing anything to you. So yeah, the first thing I would say is that the water, the sea is our home as much as the land above the surface. And we can return to where we evolved from in a way that's fairly efficient just in the space of one lifetime. So you can hold your breath, you can become an aquatic creature, and everyone has that capacity. Everyone actually has a built-in reflex called the mammalian dive reflex that allows them to extend their breath hold and their time underwater.
That's fascinating. I promise I'm going to try, especially after hearing these experiences. It's both overwhelming and awe-inspiring at the same time, which is a weird combination, but I think some of the most powerful ones that you can experience. We always finish the podcast by talking about a moment we wish we could get back or revisit. And I'm curious to know what one of those moments would be for you, having, I'm sure, a lifetime of them that you've had an opportunity to live. What is a moment you wish you could get back to?
To begin with, there's no moments that I would want to rewrite in the sense that I would want to go back and do something differently. I've definitely made mistakes, made my fair share of all of those, but those have ultimately shaped who I am, where I am today. And so I wouldn't want to rescript that. I'm happy with where I've ended up. Anthony Hopkins actually said it better than me when he says he didn't have time for regrets because we're living life now. What has happened in the past? There's no point kind of dwelling on that or getting bent out of shape because of it. So I definitely wouldn't go back to change anything, but there's moments and experiences that I would love to relive that will probably only happen once in a lifetime. The experience with a whale, I'd love to have something like that happen again to me. But also the births of my children. That's something that's only going to happen once in a parent's life. And it's a fleeting moment. And also all the other fleeting moments of their development. Kids, when they're young, they change so fast, and we miss out on so much of that. Like when I'm not there, when I'm traveling for work or other commitments, and I miss those occasions. It could be just something simple like sitting on a deck outside with my children eating grapes together and the things that we said to each other. And I remember all of those because I've consciously in that moment said, this is incredible experience. I'm so happy. I want to remember this. But what about all the other memories where I didn't make that effort and that perhaps now have vanished from my memory? And there's no kind of like, in the same way that we don't remember the dreams we had last night,
Yeah.
I can't kind of, I'm not aware of what I'm not remembering, if that makes sense. And I'd love to be able to have those revealed to me again, like to be reminded of the memories that I've maybe forgotten about.
I love that. I feel like, at least for me, whenever a new song comes in, I feel like an old song goes out, and I have a hard time remembering some of the early songs that I had written because I'm trying to make space for the new songs to come in. But in the perspective of these incredible moments that you have in your life, these fleeting moments, what advice would you give to our listeners about fleeting moments and what you've learned through freediving and this ability to be one with your consciousness in those moments? What advice would you give to someone specifically with regards to these fleeting moments?
There's no advice that I can really give without sounding trite, I think, because the only advice that you can give is just to live those experiences, not be thinking about the next one or how to make it better. If as long as you're trying to do something with the experience, then you're not in it, right? And so the only thing to do is just to bask in those moments. I talked about before being in the river, in that flow, and just immersing yourself in the experience as much as possible. Maybe making this kind of mental note so that you consolidate it as a memory that you can then revisit more easily and it doesn't vanish, disappear.
That's great advice. Listen, if people want to stay abreast of what you're doing, of what you've got going on, I know you have some courses and you teach. What's the best way for people to follow you?
So my website is williamtrubridge.com. I'm on Instagram and Facebook, of course. My company, Vertical Blue, teaches freediving courses in the Bahamas. And then the system that I developed, the mental immune system, is just at mentalimmunesystem.com.
Fantastic. Listen, thank you so much for spending the time with us, for inspiring our listeners, and wishing you the best on your next dive, brother.
Thank you, Grant. It's been a pleasure.
You bet. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Just a Moment. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast and tell a friend or two about it to help spread the word so everyone can find a moment that inspires them. Don't forget to leave us a review and check us out on the web at justamomentpodcast.com. Just a Moment is produced by Natalie Von Rose and Brant Menswar. For more inspiring shows like this, visit surroundpodcasts.com.